The moment you decide to break free from the opinions of others is the moment your life truly begins. I stand before you today not just to speak words, but to ignite a revolution in your thinking that will transform every aspect of your existence. For too long, I watched people, brilliant, talented, extraordinary people, shrink themselves to fit into boxes created by others' expectations. I was once that person too, trapped in the prison of wondering what others would think, say, or feel about my decisions. Every morning, waking up to the exhausting job of maintaining an image that wasn't truly mine. But today, I'm going to share with you the most liberating truth I've discovered in my journey. When you stop caring about the wrong things, everything in your life will fall into place. This isn't wishful thinking. This is a principle that has transformed thousands of lives, and today it will begin to transform yours. The freedom I'm talking about isn't found in some distant mountain retreat or in the pages of complicated philosophy. It's available right now, in this moment, through a fundamental shift in where you place your care and attention. Are you ready to break the chains that have been holding you back from your greatest life? Are you prepared to discover what happens when you finally stop living for the approval of others and start living from the power of your authentic purpose? Most of us are living in a prison we cannot see. The walls are built from the opinions of others, the ceiling constructed from society expectations, and the floor paved with the constant fear of disapproval. Can you feel those walls closing in on you right now? From our earliest years, we've been conditioned to seek validation outside ourselves. Good job. I'm proud of you. What will the neighbors think? These phrases programmed us to believe that our worth comes from external sources. The education system reinforced it with grades and rankings. Social media perfected it with likes and follows. The workplace cemented it with titles and promotions. And what's the result? A society where most adults report dealing with constant anxiety about what others think of them. Where the majority of people admit to making major life decisions based primarily on gaining approval rather than following their authentic desires. Is this the foundation you want to build your one precious life upon? This excessive caring creates an exhaustion like no other. It's not the healthy tiredness that comes after achievement. It's the soul-draining fatigue of constantly performing for an audience that is largely indifferent to your authentic self. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every decision comes with the weight of imagined judgment. Every victory feels hollow because it was pursued for the wrong reasons. Think about the last time you made a decision. Did you choose based on what would bring you fulfillment or what would look good to others? Did you speak your truth or did you say what you thought people wanted to hear? The honest answers to these questions reveal the price you pay in for external validation. I remember working with a brilliant executive, let's call her Sarah. She had climbed the corporate ladder with remarkable speed, earning a six-figure salary and all the trappings of success. But in our private conversation, she broke down in tears, confessing that she had pursued a career her parents valued rather than her own passion for teaching. I'm living someone else's definition of success, she said, and I'm dying inside every day. Or consider Michael, a talented artist who abandoned his creative gifts to pursue a practical career only to find himself battling depression at 45, wondering where his life had gone. These aren't isolated examples. They represent millions of people living in the shadow of their true potential because they care too much about meeting others' expectations. The most tragic part, the people whose approval you're seeking are often too busy seeking approval themselves to even notice your efforts. We're all performing for an audience that isn't even watching. And even if they were watching, their opinions couldn't possibly capture the full truth of who you are and what you're capable of becoming. Now, when I say stop caring, I'm not advocating for apathy or irresponsibility. This isn't about becoming callous or disconnected from others. The freedom I'm describing is selective caring. The conscious choice to redirect your concern from things that drain your power to things that enhance it. True freedom comes when you stop caring about the opinions of people who aren't living your journey, maintaining appearances that don't reflect your authentic self, meeting arbitrary standards set by others, receiving validation for every choice you make, and being universally liked or understood. And instead start caring deeply about your core values and personal integrity, the quality of your character and contributions, growth that matters to your unique purpose, relationships that nurture your authentic self, and the legacy you're creating through your daily choices. This shift is revolutionary because it moves your center of gravity from external to internal. Instead of being a leaf blown by the winds of others' opinions, you become deeply rooted in the soil of self, knowledge, and purpose. Research in psychology confirms what ancient wisdom has always taught. External validation is an unreliable foundation for unworthy basing. People who base their self-worth on internal factors like personal growth show significantly lower rates of anxiety and depression than those dependent on external validation. I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a former Olympic athlete who shared that her greatest performances never came when she was focused on winning medals or impressing judges. The gold medal performance, she told me, came when I stopped caring about the gold medal and simply expressed the excellence I had developed through years of training. The unhealthy caring I'm asking you to release is rooted in three false beliefs: that others' opinions define your worth, that perfect consensus about your life is both possible and necessary, and that external achievement is more important than internal alignment. When you understand that these beliefs are fundamentally flawed, you create the space for a new relationship with both yourself and the world around you. You begin to see that caring less about the wrong things isn't selfish. It's the most responsible choice you can make for living your highest contribution. Here's where we encounter the great paradox. The things we grasp most tightly are often the very things that elude us. When you desperately seek approval, you often behave in ways that make you less authentic and therefore less appealing. When you chase success with frantic energy, you often undermine the very performance that would lead to achievement. This is the paradox of surrender. By letting go, you often receive what you were chasing all along. When you stop caring about impressing people, you become more impressive. When you stop obsessing over results, you often produce better outcomes. When you release the need to control everything, life begins to flow more naturally in the direction of your dreams. Consider what happens to your body under stress. Your muscles tighten, your breathing becomes shallow, your hormonal system floods with cortisol. In this state, can you perform at your best? Of course not. The same principle applies to your entire life. When you're tense with worry about outcomes and opinions, you restrict the very flow of energy that would lead to your success. I've seen this phenomenon transform lives in remarkable ways. A surgeon I worked with confessed that his hands would shake slightly during particularly high-pressure procedures, not from lack of skill, but from excessive concern about potential judgment if anything went wrong. When he learned to focus solely on serving the patient rather than protecting his reputation, the tremor disappeared completely. A musician who had struggled with stage fright for decades found herself playing with newfound freedom when she finally released her grip on the audience's reaction and simply surrendered to the joy of the music itself. A businessman who had pushed aggressively for growth found that when he stopped forcing outcomes and started focusing on genuine value creation, his company flourished beyond his previous goals. This principle of effortless effort isn't new. Ancient wisdom traditions have spoken of it for centuries. Modern sports psychology calls it the zone or flow state, that condition where performance becomes seemingly effortless precisely because you've stopped overthinking and overcaring. The paradox is clear. Caring too much creates tension that blocks your natural excellence, while appropriate surrender allows your authentic gifts to emerge. But what should you surrender to, if not the approval of others? This is where we discover the power of authentic purpose. When you stop caring about external validation, you create the space to hear your internal calling, that unique contribution that only you can make to the world. Most people never discover their true purpose because they're too busy fulfilling others' expectations. They're living someone else's script rather than authoring their own story. But purpose isn't something you invent, it's something you uncover by removing the layers of shoulds and supposed tos that have accumulated over years of conformity. Your purpose is found at the intersection of three questions. What are you naturally good at? What do you genuinely love doing? What does the world around you need? When you align your life with the answers to these questions, you tap into a source of energy and clarity that makes everything easier. I met a woman who spent 20 years in a corporate job she tolerated but never loved. After being unexpectedly laid off, she finally had space to reconnect with her childhood passion for working with animals. Today, she runs a thriving animal therapy program that brings healing to traumatized children. I'm working harder than I ever did in my corporate job, she told me, but it doesn't feel like work because I'm aligned with my purpose. When you're connected to your authentic purpose, external validation becomes irrelevant. You don't need constant approval because you have internal confirmation that what you're doing matters. You become driven by contribution rather than recognition, by meaning rather than status. And ironically, this internal alignment often leads to external success beyond what your approval-seeking self could have achieved. Finding your purpose isn't always a dramatic revelation. Sometimes it's a quiet unfolding as you begin to listen to your own voice rather than the chorus of others' expectations. But it always begins with the courage to stop caring about fulfilling roles that others have assigned to you. As you release the need for external validation, you must develop a new skill: internal validation. This isn't about empty self-praise or participation trophies. It's about creating authentic standards of excellence based on your values rather than others' opinions. The most successful people I've worked with have developed rigorous systems of self-evaluation. They don't need someone else to tell them if their work is good. They have clear internal metrics that matter to them. They celebrate victories that others might not even notice. They correct course based on their own assessment rather than waiting for external feedback. This internal validation system requires three components: clear personal standards, regular self-reflection, and the courage to be honest with yourself. When you master these elements, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of external judgment. Your sense of worth becomes stable rather than fluctuating with each piece of feedback or social media post. Practical exercises can strengthen this capacity. Start by identifying the specific values that matter most to you, not what should matter, but what truly does. Then create metrics for living those values. If integrity matters to you, how specifically will you know you're living with integrity? If creative expression is important, what does excellent creative work look like to you? With these internal standards in place, schedule regular appointments with yourself to honestly assess how you're doing. This isn't about harsh self-criticism. It's about loving accountability to your own ideals. When you fall short, treat yourself with the compassionate honesty you would offer a respected colleague. As you develop this internal validation system, an amazing transformation occurs in your relationships. When you no longer need others to maintain your sense of worth, you can connect with them from a place of authenticity rather than neediness. You can listen without defensiveness You can share without seeking approval. You can disagree without feeling threatened. People are naturally drawn to those who have this kind of inner security. There's something magnetic about someone who isn't constantly adjusting themselves to manage others' impressions. When you stop caring about being liked by everyone, you become more likable to the people who matter, those who resonate with your authentic self. This doesn't mean your relationships will always be harmonious. In fact, as you become more authentic, some relationships may become strained or even end. People who were comfortable with your compliant, approval-seeking self may be uncomfortable with your authentic power. This is a natural part of the transformation process. But what you lose in superficial connections, you gain in deep, meaningful relationships. You attract people who appreciate you for who you truly are rather than who you're pretending to be. You build connections based on mutual respect rather than mutual validation. You create a circle of relationships that energize rather than drain you. One of the most powerful transformations I've witnessed was in a people pleaser who couldn't say no to anyone. Her calendar was filled with commitments she'd made to avoid disappointing others, leaving no time for her own priorities. As she learned to stop caring about universal approval, she began setting healthy boundaries. Some people initially reacted with surprise or even resentment, but eventually her relationships recalibrated around her authentic self. Today, she has fewer but deeper friendships, and more importantly, she has reclaimed her time and energy for her true purpose. This journey toward authentic living requires more than just a change in thinking. It demands bold action. The ultimate test of whether you've truly stopped caring about others' opinions is what you do when faced with a choice between external approval and internal alignment. Many people intellectually understand the trap of seeking validation, but still hesitate when the moment comes to risk disapproval. They know what they should do, but lack the courage to do it. The gap between knowing and doing is where potential lies dormant. Bold action doesn't necessarily mean dramatic gestures. Sometimes the boldest action is a quiet no to an expectation that doesn't align with your values. Sometimes it's pursuing a passion that others consider impractical. Sometimes it's speaking a truth that might not be well received, but needs to be spoken. I remember a talented executive who knew his company's direction was ethically problematic. For months he rationalized his silence, telling himself he was being strategic, but the misalignment was causing him physical symptoms, insomnia, chronic headaches, digestive issues. The day he finally spoke his truth in the boardroom was terrifying. He was fully prepared to lose his job. Instead, his authentic conviction sparked a crucial conversation that ultimately redirected the company. Even if they had fired me, he told me later, the relief of living in alignment with my values would have been worth it. Taking bold action requires facing the fear of judgment directly. Feel the fear, acknowledge the discomfort of potential disapproval, but act from your authentic truth anyway. Each time you choose alignment over approval, you strengthen your capacity for future courage. Start with small steps. Identify one area where you've been making decisions based primarily on others' expectations rather than your own wisdom. Make one choice differently. Notice the discomfort that arises, but also notice the sense of internal alignment that comes from honoring your truth. As you continue this practice, momentum builds. Each authentic action makes the next one easier. What once seemed impossible becomes merely uncomfortable. What was uncomfortable becomes natural. You develop a habit of alignment that eventually becomes your default way of living. The ultimate outcome of this journey of learning to stop caring about the wrong things so the right things can fall into place is a life of uncommon freedom and impact. You become capable of contributions that your approval-seeking self could never have made. You experience a quality of peace that external validation can never provide. This doesn't mean your life will be free of challenges or that everything will magically work out according to your plans, but it does mean you will face those challenges from a place of internal strength rather than external dependency. You'll navigate life's uncertainties with a clarity that comes from knowing who you are and what matters to you. I've witnessed this transformation hundreds of times, and it always follows the same pattern. Initial fear, followed by small acts of courage, followed by increasing freedom, followed by authentic impact. People who make this shift often tell me they can't believe they lived so long under the weight of others' expectations. It's like I was wearing chains I couldn't see, one person told me. And now I move through the world with a lightness I never imagined possible. This freedom is available to you right now. Not in some distant future when you've achieved more or improved yourself. Not after you've secured everyone's approval. But in this moment, through the simple yet profound decision to stop caring about the opinions that have been holding you captive. The journey begins with a question only you can answer. What would you do differently today if you weren't concerned about others' judgment? What authentic expression have you been holding back? What purpose have you been hesitating to pursue? What truth have you been afraid to speak? Whatever your answer, take one step in that direction today. Feel the discomfort, acknowledge the risk, but move forward anyway. As you do, you'll discover what thousands before you have found, that when you finally stop caring about the wrong things, everything else in your life begins to fall into place. The world doesn't need more people living in the prison of others' expectations. It needs you, the authentic you, the purposeful you, the you that emerges when approval seeking falls away. Step into that freedom today. Your life of alignment is waiting. Let me tell you about a remarkable pattern I've observed in my years of working with people making this transformation. There comes a moment, a definitive moment, when something shifts inside them. It's as if a switch flips and suddenly they see with perfect clarity how much energy they've been wasting on managing perceptions rather than creating value. In that moment, everything changes. I call this the freedom point. It's the threshold where your desire for authentic expression finally outweighs your fear of disapproval. When you cross this threshold, you experience a surge of energy that was previously consumed by the exhausting work of impression management. This newfound energy becomes available for genuine creation, connection. Many people approach this freedom point multiple times throughout their lives, but retreat when they feel the heat of potential judgment. They come right to the edge of authentic living, but then step back into the familiar discomfort of people-pleasing. The tragedy is that they never experience the liberation waiting just on the other side of their fear. What makes someone finally cross this threshold? In my experience, it's usually one of two things. Either the pain of living inauthentically becomes so unbearable that they can no longer sustain it, or they get a glimpse of the extraordinary power and peace available when they finally release the need for approval. I remember working with a talented writer who had been hiding his work for years, terrified of criticism. What finally pushed him across the freedom point wasn't courage, but exhaustion. He simply couldn't bear the pain of unexpressed creativity any longer. The day he published his first piece, he described feeling as if I'd been holding my breath underwater for years and finally came up for air. For others, the catalyst is a positive vision rather than pain. They encounter someone living with authentic freedom and think, I want that quality of peace, that confidence, that impact. They become so attracted to the possibility of liberation that it finally outweighs their fear of judgment. Wherever you are on this journey, know this. The freedom point is available to you today. You don't need special qualifications or perfect circumstances. You simply need the willingness to prioritize internal alignment over external approval, even in the face of discomfort. As you make this shift, remember that authenticity is not the same as impulsiveness. Some misinterpret stop caring what others think as an excuse for thoughtless behavior or words that harm others. True authenticity is always rooted in your deepest values, not your momentary impulses. It considers impact without being imprisoned by others' reactions. The legacy of a life lived from authentic purpose rather than approval seeking is profound. You not only experience greater fulfillment yourself, but you also create a permission field that allows others to live more authentically. Your courage becomes contagious. Your alignment inspires others to seek their own. I've seen this ripple effect transform families, workplaces, and communities. One person makes the brave choice to stop living for approval, and suddenly others feel invited to do the same. Liberation spreads from person to person like a beneficial contagion. What legacy will your life create? Will you be remembered as someone who played it safe, who stayed within the comfortable confines of others' expectations? Or will you be remembered as someone who had the courage to live from authentic purpose, who created a path where there wasn't one before? The choice is yours in this moment, not tomorrow when circumstances are perfect, not when everyone approves of your direction, but right now. In the decisions you make today, in the words you speak, in the actions you take, or choose freedom, choose purpose, choose the path that aligns with your deepest truth rather than others' expectations. When you do, you'll discover the paradoxical truth that has transformed countless lives. When you finally stop caring about the wrong things, everything else will fall perfectly into place.